welcome to May's podcast episode of Stars and Cards. We're here just to tell you and walk you through a little bit of the potential astrology we could be working with this month, plus the sort of connections with the tarot. Do you want to talk us through a little bit of this coming astrology?
Oh, it's funny when you laughed and you said it's May. I'm like, I know what you mean because May felt so far away at one point. Oh my God, because I was waiting, I've been talking about that transition with this new moon in Taurus that we just had, where I was like, everything's gonna shift from here. If I was to say there is a month where the planets are conversing easily and in more harmonious ways, which in astrology, we talk about sextiles and trines. These are aspects between planets. So they're like easeful conversations. We have a lot more of those. There's no personal planet retrogrades, and the only planet really retrograde will be Pluto, which we'll talk about in a second. So yeah, if there ever was a moment of like reprieve, it would be this month. And of course, like majority of this month is Taurus. The sun is in Taurus, so we're kind of immersed in that sort of energy. And then Gemini kind of kicks off on the 20th of May. So it's like that sort of last part. Then we have the new moon in Gemini at the end of the month. But I will say the only thing that might like a little bit of a hiccup this month would be that full moon in Scorpio on the 12th.
I have noted that one down. You said to me, I'm like, yep,
Always.
noted.
When the moon is in Scorpio in general throughout like the month, it's not a happy place for the moon to be. So it's a thing. So when it's a full moon in Scorpio, it's got that sort of heavy kind of intense way vibe to it. So the 12th, I would say like 11th to the 13th may feel, a little bit, because Mercury also squares Pluto on the day of that full moon. And that's not easy either. So it may feel just a little bit tense on the 12th. That's it. What's your sense about this month? What do you think's going on?
I think it could be a really good month for real foundational core value, um, habit, sort of ritual stuff. I think a lot of people have gone through, if not everybody, a bit of an underworld shadow work sort of stretch, and things have come up for people, whether they wanted it to, ready for it or not. And I think what's come up is that a lot of people might have felt a little unsteady, a little shaken from that. I know I certainly did. And yet I'm also now, with a
Mhm.
little space from it, feeling quite grateful for what has come up for me. So I can kind of now, next steps, it feels like next steps. And this month with the Hierophant, Temperance, the Empress, and the Page of Pentacles, who are all the associated cards for what's happening astrologically, for me anyways,
Mhm.
um, is a really beautiful month for, trusting your own expertise.
Yeah.
Um, it's real autonomy stuff, really looking at where you're giving away maybe some of your own wisdom and understanding of yourself to people or outside influences, and kind of pulling that back in a bit more, looking at where you need to maybe trust in yourself a bit more about your own experiences, your wealth of knowledge, your lived, your story, right? Like of what you've experienced and how you know yourself best. And if that's a struggle, then it's a great, I think, month to get into that kind of work. And then, you've got Temperance, which is just burning away the last little like things that we're done with, giving us a little good compost. The Empress, which is all about our ability to receive, in all ways. And the Page of Pentacles loves,
Mhm.
like, it's earth. It's like double earth. It's like, right, let's start. So Jessica Dore, who wrote a really great book about tarot from a sort of a lens of various practices and modalities of psychology and things like that, she talks about this card being like a living altar. So it's like your actions, like creating more of a vibe around being like sacred, like your actions being sacred and what you do in a day to day, even the small, it's like small everyday magic. It's like your simple pleasures. It's like how you create your life as being sacred and the choices you have. So I love that.
Yeah.
That's sort of taken that and run with it with that one. So yeah, that's a big blob, but we'll get into it now. But back and forth. But it is
I
I
love
think it's a great opportunity for a little bit. Yeah, I've just done a core values thing. It's coming out tomorrow for my newsletter group. So yeah, a deep dive into core values because I think those can change. I don't think your core values are stagnant. I think as you learn more about yourself and the world, those can shift.
that.
Yeah. As you become a parent, your core values probably change. If you go into a new profession, your core values might change. As we're seeing what's happening in the world, your core values will change. So I've done a wee freebie with the tarot links too with it. So that's coming out for the newsletter tomorrow. But I think it's a great time for that.
I feel that whenever Pluto stations retrograde for me, like when as it does this time of year, and it does it for 5 months, um, the shadow work that happens when Pluto is retrograde is pretty profound. I would invite folks to think about their relationship to power and control, like when you're talking about even like the foundational things, like we do so much out of fear or control, and it just becomes like a pattern or a cycle. But it really does take, it's a relational thing. It does really take interactions with other people to become aware of those
Yeah.
things. So it's like really like delving deep to see what our own role is in these interactions or relationships or whatever have you. Like be honest about it. So if you're going to let go of something, you really need to do it in a real transformative way. If we're going to go deep, we're going to go deep. We're going to go deep.
Going all in. Let's go.
So I think that's why I think this month, as you said, like there's so much potential to, like, especially with that full moon on the 12th, there is a moment here because, Taurus can be rigid, not in a necessarily bad way, but it has a mission to, it's a fixed sign. It has a mission to grow a garden, to cultivate like a lush garden and to grow something foundational that lasts, right? So it needs to stay focused. Scorpio is a fixed sign as well. It's focused on harnessing the energy of our emotions and our intuition and then making something from it. So it's fixated on that, but it is open to the idea of death, rebirth, change,
Yeah.
transformation. That's
Well,
really, it understands that.
it's the death card and tarot. So yes.
And that's
Love
what
it.
that 12th will be. It will be the death card right in our face. It's like,
I love that. So I wonder if the temperance for this season is going to be quite helpful with that Scorpio. It could be helpful with that Scorpio thing. So, it feels like something for a lot of us might pop up around the full moon and another little bit of completion work around something for us or an opportunity for that because we know these things are available to us. We don't have to engage. It's available there to do the work. It can be harder if we don't engage,
yes,
but but that sort of something's dead and done for us, and are we hanging on to something that maybe isn't healthy anymore, or it could even have been something that was healthy at
yeah,
one point or that felt good, and maybe it's being called and heightened on the 12th to say, look,
yeah.
if you want to cut this free and it's going to make your life better, this is the time to do it. And then temperance will just do a little composting, little fire sort of burning for it, and it'd be very helpful. It feels like a really
Yeah.
lovely thing, even if it's something like, we're talking about false,
Mm-hmm.
unaligned hierophants, right? So we're talking about these false leaders, false religious uh, prophets, things like that we see with the wellness industry, that we see in our governments and the things like that, leadership that's unaligned. Um, a lot of women in particular have been told and shown to look outward for expertise and leadership away from our own understanding of ourselves. So even that theme itself with the Hierophant of an aligned Hierophant for ourselves is, claiming our expertise,
Totally.
claiming our autonomy, trusting our knowing. Like a that's a beautiful way of Taurus being, right? Like, no, I know this shit. Like I've done the work, I've put in the time. Like, where are we kind of sometimes giving that away? And maybe even that's enough just to explore a bit for ourselves in this month.
That temperance card, which is always a card I'm like, what the heck?
I
What?
know. Wah,
What
wah.
do you mean? What is up with you? Why do you
It's
confuse me?
very beautiful. I always thought that too. It's a really beautiful card in the deck, typically. So I do have it here. It's got the sort of that angelic angel sort of thing. And yeah, but everyone's like, well, what does it do though? Like, what do we do with it? And the fact that it's fire, it doesn't come across as a fire one. So
It's wild because when you say the fire connection, because we're still very much this month in fire energy, um, because of, well, part of it, Mercury is in Aries, right? And then it moves into Taurus earlier on the 10th, but Venus is going to be in Aries. And what's interesting about Venus in Aries is Venus has had a really rough go. It was like the retrograde rattled it. All May it'll be in the sign of Aries where it's not happy. It's in its detriment. It hates being in Aries. It's not happy there, agitated there, it just wants to live a lush, lovely, uh, enjoyable experience. And then Aries is like ready to go to battle. And, uh, so part of me feels like, what's the lesson here for Venus, and what's the lesson here for all of us when it's in Aries, in terms of, what that retrograde brought for us when it did begin in Aries, and it was like reassessing our values, reassessing our relationship to love, to worth, whether it's about ourselves or what we value, right? Like some people value things, some people value ideas, some people like what really matters to us, and where's the little nuances there that we may want to rethink, like just because we thought that, as you said, our values change, our core values can shift and change, right? And
mhm.
so, as a neurodivergent, I will say though that it is really, really hard to values are harder. I feel like, at least, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I hold on to them like they're my friggin' like this is it. I tether into, and speaking of tether, because that's what this month is about so much with
Yep.
Taurus, and especially
Mhm.
this new moon that we just had in Taurus is about the idea about this new moon, and what I think is really kind of trickling down for the rest of the month is, but what are we really tethering into? Does it make sense? Like, I'm
Yeah.
tethering into this thing, but that tether may need to be like, we need to maybe reassess those roots. Like, if a garden isn't yielding the results, maybe the soil needs to change. Maybe you need to add more, you know,
Yeah.
whatever, like nutrients to that soil or whatever it is. Gotta change things to get different outcomes, right? So again, reassessing values can be hard, as for me
Yeah.
personally, because like I said, I hold on to them. I'm like, this is who I am.
Yeah. I didn't think that for a long time before I got into the work. And I have to say it was more to do with when I started really embracing tarot as a whole practice, both as a spiritual, but also as like a healing and sort of therapy practice for myself. And that's where this business has come up from. But is when I realized that like um, our values there's some values that may never change for us, and I think that's okay. And I think that that's why I think it's okay to look at having up to like 5 or 6 values that you're kind of working with at the same time. There may be some that are just like your die hard, like, no, that's who I am at the core of myself. What I think is really beautiful, because you mentioned Venus and is related to Empress card, which is a card for this month, so that's wonderful. And that's earth energy. Is the Empress is all about opening up ourselves to believing or knowing that we are worthy of adapting, pivoting, changing, shifting. Like, we can be shapeshifters, like there's a real power in that. And not the core of who we are, except like, as we are as humans. So there's bits, that's what I mean about some core values will never change for us. But I think we can say, like, when I do a core values thing, I want to circle every single one, right? Like, there's a list of 100. I'm like, well, I think these are all wonderful. Like, why would I pick one? Or like, why would I pick? But what it is just saying, it's not that you don't believe in all of them. It's that, where are you at in your life right now? What would be highest and best for
Sure,
you to do some
sure.
shifting? And are there ones that you're never going to give up, that are your diehard ones that you're just really important to you? And are there ones that you could use for right now to help you do a little bit of evolution work, a little bit of shifting work or shape shifting work for yourself? Um, And I think that's a really beautiful thing that the Empress is kind of asking us to do. It's like receiving that knowledge that we are allowed to change and we are allowed to
Yeah.
evolve and shift and grow. And I think in my mind, that means getting more actually rooted in our lives at the very core foundation of what we're here for at this time, you
Mhm.
know? I'm actually this year going to do something a little bit different because when you were talking about like, yes, neurodiverse as
Mhm.
well, we both have, and
Yeah.
Shadi and I both our children are also neurodiverse. So we laugh a lot about like being a neurodiverse parent with a neurodiverse kid and how it's wonderful that we can get them. And also, oh my gosh, do they push buttons and do they like activate so much in us? But in the realm of tarot and elemental stuff, the brains is very much like the swords and air stuff, right? And so I think what's really cool about this season is it's earth fire. So we're actually being asked to get out of our brains for those of us who are very brain dominant, who are thinkers. Unfortunately for me, I'm a thinker, feeler, thinker who just like it feeds this thing. And
Yeah.
then I exhaust myself and then I don't do the doing.
Mhm. I hear
So
that.
this, and I know when you were talking about that, being hyper analytical and making all these like connections, like, you know, when you're often neurodiverse, people can see patterns and it's like we can just create this whole realm for ourselves. And then we're just living here and we're not actually living in the real world doing the shit that we need to be doing or want to be doing. So I can relate very much to that. But what I love about this season is it's very earth fire. So it's
Yeah.
very like, looking at our day-to-day practical active taking action, actually doing, with a little fire up our bums of inspiration and capacity. And, you know, so I think it's a great month for that,
Yeah,
really.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree more. Though what's interesting is you keep saying, well, you said season. I was like, you're talking about Taurus season because we can't
Yeah.
forget
I keep doing that.
that
I know.
May, and May will bring the heady Gemini. So
Oh,
I cannot, we
I
can't
know.
forget
I'm
that we
ignoring Gemini season. I'm not going to lie. I'm
I'm like,
ignoring.
Gemini's like, I'm cool. I'm cool. Don't worry about
It's
it.
fine.
Don't
Let
worry
me
about
have it, Shoddy. Let me have it for the next few days.
It's like, don't worry, because I'm a coming. We'll have the sun in Gemini. Mercury's moving fast now. So it's going to Taurus on the 10th, and almost 2 weeks later, literally on the 25th, it enters Gemini. And then we have the new moon in Gemini. So we could do a lot of cool self reflecting at the end of that lunar cycle with the sun in Gemini. We want feedback. We want to see, did that work? Did that not work? That Gemini part of the month um, it could be supportive in that way. You know, it doesn't have to be chaotic, is what I'm saying. It could be
No,
used.
it doesn't. And I think that's really great because Gemini is like it's all about the air element. So it is all your thinking, beliefs, stories, that kind of stuff, which, you know, you and I typically are quite comfortable in that realm. But what's lovely is it's got the lovers, but the lovers and the devil are we
Oh,
duo, which that's nice tension as well, I think, to do some real healing stuff. And then it's got the magician. So we talk about feedback. I'm thinking in my mind immediately went to like, you know, channeling feedback, like actually connecting really well, you know, opportunities to connect with whatever realm we, you know, our well counsels or, you know, source, universe, God, you know, whoever, you know, whatever we sort of communicate and connect with in terms of inspiration, and how we get our ideas and where things come from for that way. There's a lovely opportunity to communicate there. And then it's the Knight of Swords, which is all about how we relate to our speed and capacity at pace. And so,
love it.
um, in terms especially with like mental health sort of stuff, I think. And I think there's a really lovely, like you were just saying, we want to think about it, we'll want to like, so assessment of what's happening this month. I think will be beautiful if we can put some things in practice and then work with you, like you said, the sort of moon cycles and into Gemini season, do some sort of assessment or allow the fruits of our labor in this
Totally.
next few weeks to see how that plays out in a couple weeks for us when we move into Gemini
Yeah.
would be really beautiful. Hmm.
I think this month could be really, really pivotal because, um, and we haven't even mentioned the huge thing that's happening on the 24th, just before that new moon in Gemini, is that Saturn, after 2 years, leaves Pisces and enters Aries, and where it soon will connect with Neptune that's there. this is kind of important. They've had a journey together in Pisces. They're going together. They're going to be together in Aries, and I think it is really going to be interesting when we zoom out to see what the next 2 years of Saturn in Aries and Neptune there kind of represent for the actions that we're taking towards our goals and towards our dreams and towards our even
Yeah.
like our spiritual like work, right? So the idea is like that Saturn brings a discipline. Saturn kind of reminds me of the Hierophant a little bit, but it's like I know it's not connected, but I'm like Saturn and Neptune together feel like a more structured and disciplined spiritual practice. Like it's about um not being loosey goosey about things. It's about like if we, like don't be all talk. Like let's put things into action and
Yeah.
in a tangible way, like which requires restrictions, which requires structure, which requires, so I
Hmm.
think in Pisces, Neptune, Saturn was trying to have that convo with Neptune, and it was like they're both like,
Fizzled out.
oh,
All
I
that
don't
water
know.
was just like pouring all over it, like dousing it. It's like, ah.
And now Neptune's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I need to do something about all this. Like I don't know what, let's do stuff. And Saturn's like, cool, I'm here. Let's
Yeah,
be,
I've been here this whole time.
I've been here for
Yeah.
at least for the last couple of years trying to figure
Yeah. No,
you
I
know,
know, because and Saturn is the world card, is associated with the world card. So it's cycle completions, it's end of cycles and stuff like that. But funnily enough, when you link it with Neptune, so that's again, well, it's earth and water, but Neptune being the hanged being, where you're suspending, and processing. So it's a processing weird thing where you're completing a cycle with processing. And I think that is real life. Like we can't do healing in an echo chamber. We can't do healing in our like perfect little nooks where we sit and do our journaling and stuff like that. Those are beautiful spaces to connect and process and things like that, but it has to happen in the real world. And I feel like that's what will be a great opportunity for those two things to happen within Aries. Is that right? Within Aries.
yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
again the emperor, so showing up, right, and
Yeah,
taking up your
100%.
space. And so
100%.
it's like taking that stuff we've done in the background and being like, right, let's see how well this happens and works for us out in the, in the real world with
Yeah, 100.
people and everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sharing the screen for the first time ever,
Oh,
but
exciting.
woo! But yeah, you see, so this is kind of like when we go to May 20th. So as we go a little bit deeper, you'll see that, let me go boop, boop, boop. Hold on. There we go. There's Saturn and Neptune, in Aries. And I think what I want to say too is that Pluto in Aquarius, there it is retrograde. You can see the red color. It indicates it's retrograde. So it now makes what we call a sextile to Aries. It's a sextile to Aries always. So it is actually for me a really, really potent, supportive moment for us. I mean, for the longer haul is what I'm saying, because
Yeah.
Pluto and Neptune will be in good conversation together, right? And they will also be in conversation with Uranus in July when it moves into Gemini. So these outer planets are going to be and Saturn are going to be having I feel like really good conversation. And Pluto will have us be considering our sort of personal power in many ways around, again, the disciplined actions that we're taking towards our whatever it is that we're doing. So it's sort of like it's holding us to it and saying, don't make yourself small. Don't doubt
Yes.
yourself. Don't do that. But it's doing it without yelling in your face. So it's
Yes.
not a square in opposition. It's not bringing the heat, but it's gently saying, hey, does this thing make sense? Is this action that you're taking? Are these dreams you're chasing after, like where how are we giving it structure to make it happen, but where are the obstacles that aren't systemic or like your own internalized obstacles, right? Because there's in many ways, let's not be, there's obstacles out there 100%, given the systems are not fair and they're
Mhm.
inequitable, but where are we ourselves posing those obstacles? And that's what that
Yeah.
retrograde Pluto will be helping with in some ways, So with Saturn and Pluto, Saturn and Neptune in the
Oh,
sign
that's
starting
really
this month.
cool.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
part of the foundational
Yeah.
part of the foundational conversation, that's why I'm saying, Taurus will be giving us a little bit of like a container here, to a
Yeah.
tether and a container, and rooting in, as you were saying, in so many ways. um because without sort of going on, but I will say, for example, if you're constantly in a state of dysregulation and panic, and cortisol levels are high, and I mean, rightfully so, given what's
Yes.
happening and how we're impacted, and people are, I'm witnessing people being impacted. But having said that, it's like, if you're going to be like then adding to that by doom scrolling, by not taking care of yourself, Taurus is like, well, then what are you tethering into right now? Are you tethering into chaos? Or can we even tether into chaos? Like, are we tethering into, what are we? Because then we talked about this last month, and so the idea is that this month is as you said, it's because it's quieter, and there's more quieter, meaning, like the energies
Yeah.
are not like throwing us around. It's just time to literally go, holy crap, like I gotta figure this out. So there's so much potential to
Yeah.
um like lay something down for all this change that's coming this year, and just in the world that we're in. Because listen, I mean, I say this all to you, to folks, knowing well that, you know, it's hard to tether into things that right now, it's like the tethers have snapped in so many ways, with
Mm.
things that once I thought, or we knew, or there's so much, we're being pushed into so much change. And for example, that part of us that wants to um, make things better, make things more just, make things more
Yeah.
fair. I get every single day, I am, my heart is more and more shattered seeing what the powers that be are allowing for or
Yeah.
making happen, that we to a certain extent can protest, and we can do our part, but it just feels such an upward battle to um and it can feel like really like disheartening and despair. And I know that's such a privilege to say, oh, I feel like despair. But the truth is, when you're not there in the middle of what is happening, and you're witnessing it, and you're trying to get out there and scream in people's faces, and it's met with like, you know, or things every single day that are beyond shocking, like, but they aren't shocking, but they also still are, where you're like,
Yeah.
wow, like you're just picking people up off the streets, or you're holding people in detention, or this is the US, but I'm just saying, this is also
Yeah.
not just here. This is happening in other countries, and the entire world feels more um authoritarian, right? We're
Yeah.
literally very authoritarian times, and it's like, I don't want to just tether into that truth, because then how can I hope and then do things to change things? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that I hope that we always stay a wee bit like shocked by what people are capable of, and I do hope for that, because I think the other side of that is apathy. And I think that's the real dangerous one, right? What I'm feeling into for me, because for my sense of security and my sense of stability is, and this is great for hierophants, for the next, with the hierophant energy of the next few weeks, is looking at the people who are doing the good things,
Yeah.
because we know we live in a world where, the clickbait and headlines that are lies, and the news, we can't. So when you're talking about Pluto is rules judgment, the judgment card, and that's all about ripping those veils away. And like we've been living with a lot of ripped veils recently, and I think it's going to be more and more so, like the systems of stability and structure that we always were
Yeah.
told to rely on, or we should rely on, or could rely on, even things like fossil fuels and things like that were just always a given, and now we're like, well, shit, this is destroying the planet, so let's work. And that could be, and despair is frightening, and I think that we're at risk of that because of the type of news, the type of quote unquote leaders that we have. Um, and I think at the same time, what I've been making a real, for myself, a real effort with is finding the people who are actually doing something about it. So that recently there's just been a couple people like I, follow, like even like good news things where they're talking about all the things that are happening, but in a positive way, because all we're hearing is negative all the time. And there's a lot of
Yeah,
negative to be aware of.
for
But
sure.
for everything
Yeah,
there's a negative, there's people doing positive things to
yeah,
help that. And I think that's how we can maybe find our place,
yeah,
like for those of us who want to fix everything. You and
totally.
I we have strong justice buttons and we want everything to be fair. And so I think sometimes we feel, or I do anyways, like at lost in how I'm meant to
Totally.
support and help, right? Because I should be helping the planet and environmentally, and then
Yeah,
to talk about Palestine, we should make sure, and we need to do all of that. But I think we can trust ourselves to know that we know what's right and wrong, and like when things come up and the conversations come up and I have opportunities to either donate or sign things, I do it for everything I can. It's
yeah.
just finding the people who are already doing. We don't have to reinvent it, was what I'm
No,
trying to
no,
say is,
I
you know what I
agree.
mean?
I
Yeah, if
agree.
there's,
It's like a fine balance between like just looking at everything good to be like, oh,
yes,
everything's fine.
yeah,
Those people are handling it.
yeah, they got
I
it.
did anything. Or, just focusing on what's not working out. It's definitely
Yeah,
it's like a finding the balance there.
yeah,
And I think that there's ways in which we can also do like make change that, for example, like when we challenged well, first of all, our spending and where our money goes is always a
yeah.
big one. But then there's also like, if like my kid's school is partnering with Indigo, which is on the
Mm,
boycott list because it actively supports the IOF, and it's like it's like genocide supporter. The school was partnering with that, so a few of us spoke up about that. I'm saying there's little things we can do
yeah,
that aren't like like they may seem small, but it's like okay, the school cut its like partnership with that place. But there's little things, right? Like
yeah,
even today, for example, is the Canadian elections, right? So,
yeah.
well, today because we're recording on the 28th. But so like it's this idea that for example, the provincial election the last time they voted in the Conservatives, and for folks that don't know what that means, that's like for Americans that's similar to Republicans, and I don't know what it is in the UK or in
It's
Scotland.
conservatives.
Oh, it's the same. Yeah, it's called Conservatives.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Hmm.
yeah, essentially, I got an email today because they got voted in. Our Conservatives got voted in again in Ontario, and that's Doug Ford. And basically, they had major cutbacks just before COVID on things like healthcare, public health, for example, just before COVID, which was terrible. And then from education. So there's a lot of teachers that were striking at the time, and so I cannot believe this province voted this government in again because I just got an email from a kid's school saying that we have to now go fill out a survey to say what further things do we want cut from the schools system. More cuts, and of course,
Hey.
with conservative governments, it's always going to be those things that they don't value. If we don't stand up to our MPs or whatever and just say like hold them to account, like these town halls in the US that are happening,
Mhm,
Canadians maybe tend to be more polite. I don't know, like it's like a
mhm.
culture of like not shit disturbing or rising up because people won't even talk about who they're voting for here. People are
Yeah.
very, like it's just like this thing, but I'm like we should be, and these are things again that are doable in our own way. Like I can write, email, meet, gather people, get a petition going. These are things that one can actively do. Again, very Taurus energy tethered
Yeah.
into your values and tangibly doing something, as opposed to just like, I'm not going to do anything.
Yes.
This month is also about the actions we take that are rooted into our values. But
Yeah.
we do need to check our values though. We need to kind of where we at. Like this, we got to gauge it first. Um as you said, some things shift and change over time, but some things don't. But there's nuance there always, right? Like
Mhm.
because I was a raging activist back like 20 years ago or 50, I may have shifted in some of my thinking and approaches, right? I may not want to burn it all down now. So then the
Yeah.
question is, what's changed? What am I tethering back into?
And it has to match your stage of life. It has to match your capacity. It has to match your interests, your skill set, your knowledge base. Like these have to all honor those things. And I think that's where we sometimes think, well, there's no point, I can't do much. But see what you're talking about, you know, showing up for your kid and your schools and the school, and that has a bigger collective, local collective impact. How do we look at the like more local level? And I think that it was just really interesting. There's something that came out recently where the way that the news presents, the way that we're seeing social media and the negative impact is it that people don't realize. So like apparently there's like 86% of the world's population want real meaningful change with environmental things, right? And you would think that some people think, I often think, am I the only one that cares about like environmental issues because no one's talking about it? You just assume no one else is as interested when actually there's a huge majority of us are. And I think that's where looking at people who are doing the work, actively showing up, like taking action, all
Yeah,
matters. It all matters. I think it's just finding your thing. And I, core values is a great start. Then it's looking at your skill set and your
capacity,
knowledge base and your understanding.
ability.
Yeah, who do you have connections to? Where are you involved and active in? Like,
Yeah,
there's so much going on, and I think if we all contribute a little bit more
sure.
locally as well, where we can, then it's going to make a big difference.
I do
Yeah.
think that is actually a perfect segue into Gemini because Gemini is about the local. It's about the
Yes.
interconnections with people, to share ideas, to vocalize, to speak on issues, and and to bring things up, and to have a curious, genuinely curious conversation. And I hate that Gemini gets pegged as like a flippant kind of social butterfly kind of energy. It's such an important energy, and I'm really excited that Uranus is moving into it because I
Yeah.
do think it's going to move us beyond binary ways of seeing the world. It's going to Uranus and Gemini will blow up our perception on so much, and it's going to encourage us to have different types of conversation, diverse types of conversations, radical conversations about, and I do think for the 7 years it's there is going to bring about major change in good connection to Pluto and in great connection to Aries. So I think our actions, our ideas, and is going to change from being like too siloed into more because we're going to probably be in a place where we have no choice around that. Like the question,
Yeah.
like as you said, there's so many issues from climate crisis, disaster to genocide to um local like just cutbacks on things that matter are important, authoritarianism stopping us from like speaking out and making sure we can continue to speak out in the so-called free world. And so I think like as you said, we're going to have to come together to be like, you got this, and you got this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to
Yeah.
listen. We need each other more than ever, but we're just not quite, honestly feel like when Chiron leaves Aries and we're going to, when it enters Taurus, and we're going to realize that for our own security, stability, and for the sake of this world, of Earth, of everything, we're going
Mhm.
to have to get over our little silos, which I
Yeah.
believe Chiron and Aries created. It helped us identify ourselves more, but then what
Yeah.
happened was we got siloed into little camps and groups, and
Yes.
for better or for worse. But the worst part of it is that yes, there's now more divisions. So
Yeah.
now we're going to have to bridge some of those gaps
Yeah.
by having conversations and not shutting someone down. Like so, anyways, not to go on, but I'm like Gemini will bring
Yeah.
us into that yeah.
Yeah, and that requires us to drop perfectionism for ourselves and everybody else because we need everybody in their imperfect selves, and maybe they don't say all the right things exactly the right way, and God forbid you said the wrong thing or didn't quite, but there's enough of us in the center, all the way from the center right to the far sort of left
Yeah.
thing, that could really, we're the majority. And so if we can all learn to speak to each other and kind of get out of our own way that way, then
Yeah.
there's a real power in that. We need that. We need that. It's the counter to despair, right? Is just
Yes.
potential possibility, a bit of hope, a bit of like, looking at where things are working and where things are moving in a more positive way, because there is actually a lot out there, despite what we're made to feel. And I think connecting in real IRL, in real world terms, and doing things like that will be very beneficial. But yes, it's a good time for it.
For now, I just hope that folks just take in this energetic reprieve. Uh,
Yeah,
oh, we'll see.
we'll
And
see.
yeah, you can definitely, Jenny, you'll have your Gemini season Astro Tarot
Yeah,
messages.
I've got my Taurus one just up now on the blog, and then I'll have the Gemini one coming up. And then anyone on my newsletter crew will have links towards the core values stuff that's coming up. And there's a tarot practice. I'm going to try it this year for the first time, where I'm going to rely on my intuitive gifts. And actually, I've made a thing where you've got it's a core value for every single card in the deck. So I'm going to shuffle and use the tarot deck this time. So that's available for people if they want to go check that out. Just a different way of doing it, because I'm always, for
Yeah,
someone who's a big thinker, I want to get more into the intuitive part of it. So we'll see what comes up.
yay, I love that. And I'll have the May report up on my
Yes.
membership space. And
Yeah.
I do want to just say that there are really some cool moments throughout the month, like the specificities of the planets and conversations. So I feel like it'll feel more hopeful. Um, in spite of everything, I think that we'll be in more hopeful energy than we have been in a long time, is what I'm saying. And that doesn't negate that there's things going on, but I think that we're going to find a way through.
Love it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, my love, as usual.
You too. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great month. Bye.